Good morning. I am Reverend Jeffrey Kealoha Ryan. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to serve this beloved community, Riverside Community Center for Spiritual Living, where? Love lives here. Yes, love lives here. We are a social media friendly community. What that means is that we invite you to tweet, to share, to Instagram, to do all those fun and fabulous, hey Sanja, there's fun and fabulous, wonderful things. Let people know that you are here. Go ahead and check in on Facebook. And use the hashtags there. We are RCCSL and Love Lives Here.
Meet Sarah Flowers, a prolific African-American writer of science of mind books in the 1940s. Flowers was a writer, publisher, metaphysician, frequent speaker, and teacher of the science of mind. She took the major course at the Institute of Religious Science in Los Angeles in 1937 and wrote her first book, Common Sense and Its Application in Everyday Life, in 1941. Other books followed, including The Metaphysical Thesaurus and Metaphysical Dictionary, Should I Pay for Metaphysical Treatment, and Atomic Metaphysics, The Electrical Principle of Man. In Atomic Metaphysics, she writes, in metaphysics, we must then recognize that there is a power that revolves in and around, out and beyond us, at a rate equal to the atomic energy in our material beings. But it's important to note what Sarah Flowers considered her most important work: teaching practitioners metaphysical treatment for all of the problems that confront us today. You might think Science of Mind's inclusive teachings of oneness would be immune to America's history of racial segregation, but that was not the case. Dr. J. Arthur Twine founded Eastside Church of Religious Science in his home in 1932. The congregation quickly grew and became the third church to be ordained and chartered by Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science. It was a thriving multiracial church, but in 1945, Third Church of Religious Science, as it was now called, was moved to the bottom of the church listings in Science of Mind magazine and noted as a colored church. Ernest Holmes found this unacceptable and went to speak to church members. He said, "I have been told that too many non-Caucasians attend these lectures. True, there are Caucasians and non-Caucasians in this congregation, but this we must affirm. We are all children of one living God, one God that permeates all without exception, one intelligence that governs all, and most important, every man and woman who abides in the universe is a significant entity in the one universal consciousness. Our doors will forever be open to all. Whoever you are, be proud. You are a divine idea in the mind of God." The magazine staff immediately corrected this error and returned to listing churches alphabetically. The following year, Dr. Twine made his transition, but the church remains strong today as Third Church Center for Spiritual Living. A number of Dr. Twine's descendants became practitioners, lay leaders, and ministers, including his great-granddaughter, Reverend Stacy Hilton, who currently serves as co-spiritual director of the Las Vegas Center for Spiritual Living. Dr. J. Arthur Twine and Sarah Flowers, Black evolutionaries in Science of Mind.
That Matthew Taylor is going to be sharing with you next week. Matthew Taylor is a seminarian from Star King Seminary, based in Berkeley, and it's the Unitarian Universalist Seminary that is there in Berkeley, and he is the president of the board of trustees over at our local Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, and so he will be speaking next week. So please come and visit and see him. And we have Adam Wedeking here today as well, who also serves on their Social Justice Committee as well. So welcome, Adam. Good morning. Good morning. Aloha. There we go. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, there is so much good. I mean, it has been mind-blowing. Starting off this morning singing Sing Wide the Doors, again, with so much enthusiasm and velocity and vim and vigor, and all the other V's. It was vibrancy and vitality and vivaciousness. Was a really good way to start off this morning, and it's really a good way to start off every morning, but it really sums up what has been going on this week here in this community. The things that have been happening behind the scenes. The very first thing I want to make sure that we draw your attention to is Jubel and Dennis and Max are here in front with us. Well, and now they're back there. There they are. So, as you know, our beloved Sean is walking his own journey at the moment, and what has opened up as a possibility then after last week, at the installation last week, when we had these beloveds play at the installation last week, what opened up for us is the opportunity to have all three of them here on a regular basis. How exciting is that? Thank you. Some other wonderful opportunities have opened up this week as well, and I'm going to share those with you. But what happened last week, what I can say and what I experienced and what I know several of you have experienced with last week is that yes, we've been together for almost a year now, yay. But last week, there was something about that Saturday that really did swing the doors wide open, not only for me personally, but I think for us as a community and what it is that we have the ability and the capability and the potentiality to offer to our larger community. All of a sudden, and it's not all of a sudden, because what we know is that if we set our intention and we relax into it and we surrender and we allow, Spirit works in ways that are unimaginable, as one of my friends said this morning in the morning table. So that's what's part of what's been unfolding for us. And it's only getting better. And I just thinking about it brings me to tears. The possibility of saying yes to ministry, saying yes to the call on life, and just saying yes and simply allowing, and then seeing where Spirit takes us. Oh my gosh, it's beyond anything we'd possibly imagine. So this year, we're working with the theme of spirituality in action. That is the theme for the year for all Centers for Spiritual Living worldwide. And so this month, the theme that we're looking at then is seeking the common good. And then oneness is part of that seeking of the common good. The very first week of the month, we talked about oneness, and we talked about the shadow side of oneness, and how sometimes when we say, oh, we're all one, we can kumbaya, and we can kind of spiritually bypass what's really right there in front of us. And so we looked at the opportunity then to look at oneness, but also to see and honor and celebrate the diversity within our unity, because unity does not mean uniformity. Unity does not mean that we're all exactly the same. And so we have the opportunity to celebrate our differences. We have the opportunity to look at and perceive and learn and grow and experience new and wondrous things based on our individualization. And to not deny the individualization, but to see the individualization and appreciate it for all its glory and all its beauty and what then it contributes to the larger whole. Then last week, we had the opportunity then what kind of could have felt like, well, we just talked about that, but now we're talking about this, and it seems contradictory, but it's really not. And last week, we had the opportunity to then see past the differences or beyond the differences to the ultimate universality of life. And so that the commonality, the shared humanity of life, that all of us as creatures, all of us as sentient beings, have the desire to avoid suffering and to seek pleasure. And that's something that the Dalai Lama says is kind of universal to all of sentient life. And I would argue that all life is sentient, right? Because trees are going to try to avoid, something as well to the best of their ability, even though they might not be able to pick themselves up and dance themselves through the forest and put themselves back down. Right? Dance themselves through the forest and put themselves back down. Right? So today, the idea here that we're exploring today is, what is the common good? This year's themes are based all on the 10 prophetic justice principles by Dr. James Forbes and of Riverside Church, not this Riverside, but Riverside somewhere back in like New Jersey or something. So, but at any rate, his justice principles, his prophetic justice principles. And so this month, as I mentioned, is seeking the common good. So what is the common good? So that was our theme this morning also. Across the way in Johnson Hall at our morning table, which we do every morning at 9 o'clock, and we had a really rich discussion this morning as to what is the common good, and that discussion took us in a variety of places. And I'm going to share some of that with you this morning as well. Before I get there, though, what I'd like to share with you is that one of the visions, or the primary vision that we have here at Centers for Spiritual Living, is we envision a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. Right? Yes. Good vision to have. Lofty vision to have. High vision to have. Right? We envision a world that works for everyone and all of creation. So that means human and non-human life. All of creation. There's a book that is written by Sharif Abdullah, and he wrote this book called Creating a World That Works for All. Sound familiar? All right, Creating a World That Works for All. And in his book, he talks about what it would look like, what criteria are necessary for creating a world that works for all, for the common good, if you will. And that's where I would like to start this morning, is with that. So what he speaks to, or what he brings forth, one of the many things that he brings forth in the book, is he brings forth the idea of different types of people. The first type of people are our keepers, Keepers. The first type of people are our keepers. These tend to be our indigenous peoples, and they tend to see a worldview of, I'm in harmony with all of life. I live in harmony with all of life. So this is one of the three that he talks about. Then he talks about the breakers. Breakers. Not break dancers, breakers, right? So he talks about the breakers. And the breakers' worldview is, I create a world that works for me, right? I create a world that works for me. And what we see largely in developed countries, what we largely see, and even developing countries, what we largely see is this breaker idea, this breaker mentality of, it comes from a sense of lack, it comes from a sense of limitation, that I need to get mine, I'm going to look out for me, and if you get some too, hey, cool, but there's a limited amount of pie, and I'm a pieaholic, and, I need to have my half of boysenberry pie, and I may or may not share the rest of it with you, right? Because we're not that far from Knott's Berry Farm. Yes. What he also then says is that the United States leads the world in this breaker mentality. Now you have to keep in mind that he wrote this book back in 2001. So this is 18 years ago that he was writing this idea. So good, bad, and different, but that we have a tendency to lead the world in this idea of, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, make it work, try and gain more for our own personal prosperity, that there's not enough, that there's lack, that there's limitation. Agree with it, don't disagree with it, or agree with it or disagree with it, be it as it may. This is the perception of the breaker society. And then the third group that he talks about is he talks about the Menders. And the Menders are former breakers who then realize that, whoa, we're kind of on this weird trajectory here. And so then we need to go back and we need to look at the wisdom of the indigenous peoples, the wisdom of the ages, and the wisdom and the benefit of the breaker society, which is not entirely bad. There's a lot of innovation that happens there. And then we need to bring those two together to then work on, to create then a world that works for everyone. So it's an evolutionary type of deal that we're talking about. And so what he says about the Menders, the Mender view of life, I have a missed call. What he says about the Mender view of life is the Mender goal is an inclusive human society on a habitable planet, a society that works for all humans and for all non-humans. This means fulfillment both of those who are at the top of the society and for those who are at the bottom. Work, resources, responsibilities, spiritual gifts, and material goods may not be evenly spread, but everyone has enough. Anyone could trade places with anyone else without feeling deprived or oppressed, and such a society is essentially benign and healing to both the human and more than human world. So where does Centers for Spiritual Living fall on this spectrum? Well, our very vision statement says it right from the very beginning. We believe in a world that works for everyone in all of creation. So you've entered into a room, you've entered into this community that believes in a world that works for everyone. Basically, you've entered into, by Sharif Abdullah's definition, a Mender community. That what we're here about is we're here about mending what has been. And if we look at our focus statement, let's say it together with all the V's that we can. Let's do that. We embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love. So if we're looking at this, that speaks directly to what I just mentioned about creating a world that works for everyone in all of creation. So the first criteria that he mentions there is enoughness. What is it that we believe? What is it that we teach here? We teach that we live in an abundant universe, that there is more than enough for everyone. That the creator, the sustainer, the maintainer of life gives fully of itself always, eternally, infinitely, to the amount that we're willing to receive. That it is forever giving of itself. Forever giving of itself. So if we live in an abundant universe that is forever giving of itself, then there is essentially always enough. And that's where we have the opportunity to come from, that enoughness, that place of enough, that there is always enough, regardless of appearances. So the first criteria of looking at this is there enough? Is there enough? Is somebody experiencing enough or enoughness? Or is a group of people experiencing enoughness? We come from this place of full knowing that there is enough. The second criteria of creating a world that works for all is exchangeability. And what exchangeability talks about is, can I trade places with you, and you trade places with me, and both of us have our needs met because there is enough, and neither feel deprived or oppressed. So there's an exchangeability. Can I trade places? It might be a little uncomfortable, but would I feel or would you feel oppressed or deprived if we swapped places? Then the third is working for the common benefit? Does the system, does the institution, does the policy, does whatever it is, work for the common benefit? Or as Dr. Forbes says, does the policy support the common good? Does it work for the common good? Or does it work for an elite few? And so the question there then becomes, if we look at the other two, the enoughness and the exchangeability, then it's easier to see if we're working toward the common good or we're working toward the common benefit. Agree? Make sense? Following the logic of that so far? Okay. What Sharif Abdullah then invites us to do is he then invites us to apply this to real life situations, to watch TV, to go to city council, to participate in local activities, and to see what is going on in the world around us rather than sticking our heads in the sand, but to get out and engage and then apply these questions to whatever it is that we're seeing or whatever it is that we're experiencing. So, for example, if we have the homeless mother, is there enough? Does she have enough food? Does she have enough shelter? Does she have enough for sustainability? Then the question is exchangeability. Would we trade places with her voluntarily and feel that we too were valued and seen and heard and had enough? Would it be okay if we just switch places with this person? And then we get to ask the question, does the social services that we currently have or the system that we currently have in place, is it really working for the benefit of her and her family? And some people will go, well, yeah, of course, they're getting services. But really, when we look at it with a larger perspective, does poverty, does the systems that are in place that help perpetuate poverty and the institutions in place that help perpetuate the poverty, is that really serving the larger community? Is that really serving everyone? Is that really serving her? And would it really, and does it even really serve you? Right? So we have the opportunity to look at all these different scenarios in our world: homelessness, asylum seekers, refugees, murderers, bank robbers, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to choose to look at in the world. And then we have the opportunity to come from a larger perspective, a more compassionate perspective, and to see things with a much broader idea, a more complex idea of what is really going on here. And when we have that much more complex, broader view, a more holistic view, then we can then begin to take steps to then begin to dismantle that and to change it. First, we have to be aware of it. First, we have to engage with it before we can even begin to think about changing it. If we don't know that something is going on, we're not even aware of it, then how do we then begin to even start to work in consciousness to change it? Right? So, I've had a lot of opportunities this week, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. A lot of opportunities this week and a lot of great things happening this week for me and for us to work for the common good, whatever that looks like. To experience mutual benefit for myself, for friends, and for our congregation. So let me share some of them with you. I'm sure you'll get excited the way I got excited too. So, one of the things that happened earlier this week is, well, aside from Jubel and the guys, that was number one, right? Woohoo, there we are. So something else that happened this week is it was on Tuesday I received a text and a phone call from Todd Ridgway, who's on the board of Path of Life, and they needed to quickly change their venue from the venue that they had for a big concert to a different venue, and he contacted me and said, can we have it at the center? Oh, wow. All right? So I want you to look around this room. Look around now. See the space? That's a possibility for growth, right? That's the way we're going to see the space, yes? But I want you to know that on Friday night, when Path of Life had their benefit concert here in this room, every seat in this room was taken. And I'm not kidding. Every seat. We then had to bring in 16 more chairs from Johnson Hall to the back of the room. Those were taken, and then there were people standing on the sides and in the back. Now think about who Path of Life, who this benefit concert draws. Well, first we think about the type of work that Path of Life does. Who does Path of Life serve? Path of Life serves our curbside community. It serves our homeless community, and it serves our community transitioning from homeless to homed and to re-entering society, working and having sustainability and having food and shelter, right? That's who Path of Life, that is the population that Path of Life serves, which is also near and dear to our community's hearts, because where do we sit? We sit right here on the edge of Fairmount Park. We have some of our beloved curbside community that comes regularly to our front door, sleeps in the shelter of the alcove there or over here, comes regularly seeking some kind of service or assistance. So we opened our doors and Path of Life came in, and who's attending this benefit but city planners, representatives from the mayor's office were here, representatives from city council were here, representatives from other organizations were here, and you know what? The very common thread was, one, I didn't know you were here, didn't know what the building was here, and then two was, I love your space, we can feel the love in this room. So just saying yes, we had the opportunity to open the doors to Riverside and to the greater community. People are learning who we are. And as more and more people learn who we are, more and more people can then come and participate in greater ways, right? Another opportunity that came through this week is Rev Sonia, who you met last week, and I had the opportunity to meet with Bryant Fairley of Cal State San Bernardino and his assistant, Marissa. And they work for the Office of Community Engagement. And so we just had a chance to sit and talk with them and see where our organizations might be able to work together for the common good. And as we were discussing, several different opportunities came up as they were sharing what it is that their office does and what they do, and we were sharing what we do. There's some great opportunities for partnership that came up, and then I received another phone call from Rabbi Singer's husband wanting to participate in space. So here's just one way that this could work, right? It's still in the infancy stages, but it's super exciting. So we have this Evolve group. Yay, thanks to Jeannie and everybody for last night. It was so much fun. Truly Wed game. If you weren't here, you missed it. I think it's going to have to be an annual thing. And congratulations to the Conleys for winning. Yes. There they are right there. For winning the Truly Wed game. It was truly fun and truly extraordinary. And we learned that somebody likes to shake water off. Not saying who. You had to have been there to know. I'm not going to tell on people, but somebody, when they get out of the shower, shakes water off. Okay? You missed it. Good plug for next year, right? All right, so we have our Evolve group. Our Evolve group stands for Jeannie. Exploring viable options
To live vibrantly and ethically.
to live vibrantly and ethically. Exploring viable options to live vibrantly and ethically. And what's unfolded for this group is they just used to be the vegan-vegetarian group. And now there's the vegan-vegetarian piece, there's also the animal ministry piece, and then there's also a sustainability piece. Okay, that's kind of unfolding for them. So we've got this Evolve group. Then back to Cal State San Bernardino, one of the things where they're working in the social justice department, or social justice area, is around environmental justice. And then we have Rabbi Singer's husband, who comes to us last week and he says, you know, I'd like to do some plays or do some productions that have a social justice piece or a social engagement piece, which is also something that, you know, Tony brought to us as well, that we have our creative arts ministry here with somewhat of that focus. So when you bring all these things together, here we have the first play that Rabbi Singer's husband wants to do is a piece about the environment. It's a Henrik Ibsen play about the environment, and it's called Enemy of the People. And it's a man who stands up and stands for, you know, trying to make a difference in the world while watching his community suffer at the hands of a tannery. But at any rate, so you have this environmental, he's wanting to do an environmental play. We would tie him with Tony, right? So then the two of them can work together on that piece of it. Then we tie them in with Evolve, who is doing work on sustainability, and then we bring in Cal State San Bernardino and their experts, and we bring in UCR, because I just found out more about that from Casey yesterday. We bring in some UCR experts, and not only are we able to do a play that brings awareness to situations, to environmental situations, but then we have a wonderful panel discussion with all these industry experts that are in the field, and then we open it up to, because we just rejoined, the Chamber of Commerce. So look at what's possible when people are working in relationship together. That's just one of the things that is just like unfolding. It's super exciting. Super exciting. And then the other one I want to share with you is, as you heard last week, Rev Sonia is from Canada. Okay, you might have heard her accent last week, and her process and projects and out and about. You might have heard that. So we had the opportunity to go, and we had the opportunity to meet with Hadley Baramovich, who is an immigration attorney locally here in Canyon Crest, actually. And so we sat with Hadley to talk about what it would look like for Sonia to get her R1 visa, her minister's visa, to be able to work legally in the United States as a minister, so that at some point she'll be able to actually be present with us, not just remote. And she'll be traveling back and forth, but to actually be able to come and work on a more regular basis. And so we're sitting there with Hadley, we're explaining the situation, you know, and everything, and Hadley's like, okay, well, I'm already going to do this for you at a deep discount. I'm like, oh, okay. Great. So Hadley goes away, talks to her finance people, and comes back, and she goes, okay, so normally our fees for this are our normal fees are $4,000. But we're only going to charge $1,500 just to cover our costs, because what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to partner with you. Legal terms, it's called quid pro quo, but whatever. And so then she proceeds to tell us about a family, Ms. Chalil, and her 3 children, are 15, 11, and 8. That were brought over by a coyote from Guatemala. They were brought into the country by a coyote. The coyote took all of their money and made all kinds of promises, which of course were not true. And so now this family of 4 is in Lake Elsinore area. They're in Lake Elsinore, and they're stuck. They can't go home because they have no money. And they can't work, and they can't stay, and they can't go to school because they don't have the proper documentation. So Hadley asked if our congregation and our people would be able to help support Ms. Jalil and her family in whatever way is appropriate and possible. We don't exactly know what it is that she needs at the moment, but I am meeting with her and Hadley and the Consulate of Guatemala on Wednesday. So, so this is very tangible ways that we as a community, because like after I have this meeting, I'm going to come back to you and go, okay, here we go. Here's the way that we can help Ms. Jalil and her family, right? And I know, based on everything that I've seen and experienced in this community, that this community is going to stand up and rise up, and we will be able to support her in whatever ways we best can. And tonight we have a meeting at 5 o'clock. All of you are welcome to attend with the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity, Hilda Cruz. This is the group that we've been working with, that we've been partnering with, that we've been doing the visits to Adelanto with, visiting detainees in Adelanto and doing the work of accompaniment. So here's a real way that we can really accompany a family who at this point just really wants to go home. They just really want to go home. So we have this fantastic opportunity to work for the larger common good. And what I know is that we were talking about it this morning, and that so much of our society wants to work or fix a problem at the level of effect. And what we know in this faith tradition is that a problem isn't fixed just at the level of effect. A problem is fixed at the level of causation. And when we were discussing that this morning, what that really looks like and what I brought forth and what I present to you as well is that, but we also have to be looking at the level of effect. We have to see that first. We have to address that first. We have to have compassion for that first and act there to alleviate the suffering, to alleviate the lived experience in the moment. And then that allows us together, collectively, to then begin to work on the actual cause of the problem. It allows for a space for us to be able to then work in consciousness to shift the consciousness. Last week I told you that we do not deny the effect. What we do is we deny the cause. We deny the false belief that causes the effect. Too often in our denomination, it's been very easy to say, I'm just going to sit in here and we're going to meditate and we're going to pray and that is it. It's all done in consciousness. But for Miss Jalil or our beloveds who are camped out in the morning here, that is not enough. We have the opportunity to step forward and engage from a place of spirituality, engage from a place of love, of lived love, to engage there, to alleviate, to help embolden, to help enliven, to help lift up to the point where then we can begin to make a difference about consciousness and sharing with them the ideas that we teach here, and not even necessarily going out and proselytizing, but just sharing and living by example, right? So when we talk about we embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love, what downloaded this morning as I was in my office is like, and how do we do that? We do that through partnerships, we do that through programs, and we do that through practices. So we do it through the partnerships with our community partners, with our global partners that we're continuing to build relationships with. Then we do it through our programming, we do it through our classes, we do it through the services that we ourselves offer here that actually embolden and enliven people to live their highest potential. And then we also do it through our own practices. It's not a separate, the practices, I have it last, and it came through last because it's the foundation. It's each one of us living our spiritual practices, doing our spiritual practices, coming from a place of prayer, coming from a place of meditation, being prayed up so that we can then step up. That's what we have our opportunity to do. And in so doing, we are all working for the common good. In so doing, we are working and seeing that there is enough for all. We are working and seeing that, you know what, I could trade places with you and I would do it in a heartbeat. And we are working from that place of creating a world that works for everyone, because we are seeking the common good, we are seeking the common benefit. And that is what this community is called to do. Amen, hallelujah. We're going places, people. Riverside is on the map. As the city as a whole, we are poised to lead this region. And as it came through before, you heard Dr. Kathy mention something about it, that our community is poised to lead with love. Our community can be an example of what it looks like when a non-denominational or a trans-denominational church, working in partnership with others, leads the way and changes the world. Blessings to all of you. I'm so excited to be continuing this journey with you, and I look forward to what's unfolding this coming week, because this last week was already full and overflowing. So thank you all for being here. Let's come together in consciousness, shall we? All right, so I invite our practitioners to stand and surround the sanctuary. I also invite our core council to please stand and surround the sanctuary. All of these beloveds hold this community high in love and prayer and in light every day. As Tim mentioned, please do not leave the sanctuary with anything heavy on your heart. Please see one of our practitioners, either Susie or Tim, after service to receive prayer. You can always contact our Ministry of Prayer by emailing prayer@riversidecsl.org, or right outside the doors there, we do have a prayer box that you can drop a prayer request in, and know that all of our practitioners here will lift you in prayer this week. So let's just come together in consciousness. I recognize that right here and right now there's only one power, one presence, one life, one love, one infinite eternal beingness, this one I choose to call the divine, I choose to call it God. For that's just a shorthand, it's just a shortcut for the all that is the all. It is love, it is joy, it is harmony, and it is peace that passes all understanding. It is first cause and only cause. It is the law of life. It is the law of love. And it is the who of who I am. For I recognize that since there is only this one life, that there's only this one that has created all of creation, that all of creation has to be this one made manifest. Therefore, I know that the who of who I am is the divine made manifest. That I am an individualized expression and impartation of this one life of spirit. And as I know that this is true of me, I know that this is true of all of life. I know that this is true of everyone here and everyone who ever hears these words, everyone who ever was, everyone who ever will be. For truly there is only this one life, and we are the power and the presence of love made manifest here and now. And so I speak my word for this community here and now, knowing that we are the power and presence of love in a greater way in our community in Riverside, and that we live out our mission of a world that works for everyone, or live out our vision of a world that works for everyone in all of creation. That we recognize that there truly is enough. We recognize that we are inherently one with each other, that we are interdependent, that we are interconnected, that we are interwoven with our brothers and sisters and siblings of all shapes, sizes, and forms, of all of life itself. And that together we lift the consciousness of the planet, we lift the consciousness of our city, we lift the consciousness of our very community by doing the work within, by going within and recognizing the who of who we are, that we are the divine. And so it is the divine that we see in each other, it is the divine that we see at work in our lives, in our community, and in our society. We look with fresh eyes and we say yes to being the call, to being the solution to whatever perceived problem that we see. That each one of us is that solution in consciousness. We come together in partnership. We come together to learn. We come together to grow. And we come together to practice. And simply allow it to flow from us We open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to move out into the world in greater ways. And so I know that our community makes a difference. Each one of us makes a difference because each one has said yes to the presence that is inherently within each one. And so I give thanks for the unfoldment of the vision. I give thanks for the unfoldment of the mission of this center and of each individual present. And I simply release this word into the law, knowing that it is done, knowing that it is so, and together we affirm, and so it is.